and embrace their spirit. 韩东。
Thank you very much, our reporter Wu Guoxiu at Tiananmen Square in central Beijing. The monument to the people's heroes stands at the center of Tiananmen Square. It's a 10-story obelisk commemorating China's martyrs. Now let's take a look at its history.
The Chinese government made the decision to build the monument in 1949, when the People's Republic of China was founded. Architects from across the country submitted more than 140 designs. 2 years later, one was chosen. Beginning in 1952, it took 6 years to finish. The monument is nearly 38 meters tall and weighs over 10,000 tons. It contains some 17,000 pieces of marble and granite. On the pedestal, there are 8 huge bas-reliefs carved out of white marble, depicting scenes from the First Opium War in 1840 to the founding of the new China in 1949. It pays tribute to heroes who, since 1840, have laid down their lives in struggles against domestic and foreign enemies. It honors those who have died in the struggle for national independence and the freedom and well-being of the Chinese people. The front of the monument bears an inscription in Mao Zedong's handwriting, which says, "Eternal glory to the people's heroes." On the back is a message drafted by Chairman Mao and written by late Premier Zhou Enlai.
For more insight into this solemn occasion, we're joined in the studio by Mr. Xu Qingduo from Pangoal Institution. Well, Mr. Xu, I'd like to start with the epitaph engraved on the monument to the people's heroes right in the center of the Tiananmen Square. As we just heard, it was drafted by Chairman Mao Zedong and written by Premier Zhou Enlai, and it traces back to history of Chinese people's painful struggle to gain liberation, independence and prosperity right to the year 1840. It's a painful start for China's modern history, isn't it? Tell us more about the significance of that year and the struggle to follow.
Well, that's a very important date, 1840. That is the year the UK launched the so-called Opium War against China, basically to force China to open its door to business. But what kind of business? As opium, to sell opium to the Chinese people. We know how much damage it had done basically to the health and to the nation. And of course, after that, we have a history basically of 100 years of humiliation. You have a first Opium War, and years later you have a second Opium War, and then you have a war with Japan, 1894, and China was humiliatingly defeated. And then, of course, you have wars even in the Chinese land between Japan and Russia. And later on, we have the Japanese invasion that lasted for decades, actually. So the whole years, 100 years, until 1949, when new republic was founded, October 1st. So Chinese people suffered the untold, humiliation, and the country was weak. Was invaded and was bullied, was covered up by foreign powers. And so that's a very painful history. And so the monument to people's heroes, basically to all those who have basically sacrificed their lives to the rebirth, I would say, of the nation, to the independence of the nation or regaining of sovereignty. And also, of course, ultimate goal is for the well-being of the people, prosperity of the nation. We are still working on that. That's part of their, I guess, their spirit, their ultimate pursuit. By dedicating their life and the time, energy, many of the heroes were very young when they were basically killed. Sometimes as 17, as young as 17, as young as 20. But in terms of the spirit, I would say, is still encouraging even today for young generations.
And September the 30th is China's Martyrs Day, and October the 1st is the National Day of the People's Republic of China. What's the significance of these two important occasions linking together?
I think September 30th itself, we know that's the date when the groundwork was laid for the building of the iconic monument in Tiananmen Square to the people's hero. And also the next day is the National Day, the birth of the nation. Basically, you see, that's a natural procession. That's a natural link, natural logic. For the martyrs, their dedication, their lives, their time, whatever they have, they dedicated this to the basically independence, liberation of this nation. And the next day, the nation was re-established, was celebrated. That's why we celebrated the day, we celebrated the nation, and we should not forget, of course, the spirit and the dedication of those fallen soldiers.
Well, Mr. Xu, we'll be getting back to you on this. Over 1 million troops from the Chinese People's Volunteer Army was sent to the battlefields to aid the DPRK during the Korean War. The war ended over half a century ago, but China still remembers the more than 180,000 soldiers who gave up their lives there. Our reporter Xu Xingchen spoke to one of them who shared with us his and his comrades' heroic story.
Our victory today is given by thousands of revolutionary martyrs. We must inherit and defend peace.
84-year-old Jin Donghui joined the Chinese Volunteer Army at the tender age of 17 to aid the DPRK during the Korean War. As a member of the Korean ethnic minority in northeast China, he served as a translator and went through 3 major battles.
We marched over 100 kilometers every day, extremely tired. Some would pass out and fall asleep alongside the road. Others would wake them up and continue the march.
The Chinese Volunteer Army had limited resources, and the troops had to engage in close combat and fight with fists and knives.
Hills were covered with blood. The fighting was fierce, and we also lost many comrades.
Jin saw his comrades die in front of his eyes. During the Korean War, China deployed a total of over 1 million troops to aid the DPRK. The sacrifice was also huge. More than 180,000 Chinese volunteer soldiers were believed to have died.
During the Korean War, the American Empire's invasion reached over the Yalu River, threatening the Chinese people. In order to safeguard China's safety and to aid the DPRK, the Chinese People's Volunteer Army was sent in.
Our veteran Jin has been paying a close attention to the recent developments between the DPRK and the U.S. He has visited the DPRK twice in recent years. He's seen the difficulties caused by tensions with the U.S., but he also sees hope that a peaceful solution may finally come. Xu Xingchen, CGTN, Shenyang, Liaoning Province.
A Chinese law that protects the reputation and honor of those who sacrificed for the nation is now in effect. The Heroes and Martyrs Protection Law was adopted earlier this year. It mandates the country and the people should forever respect and remember those who made sacrifices and contributions to the Chinese nation. The law bans activities that defame heroes and martyrs or distort and diminish their deeds. Those who violate their rights of name, portrait, reputation and honor will be punished. Acts that glorify invasions are also banned, with offenders facing punishments according to the severity of their actions. The law also demands protection of memorials of heroes and martyrs, as well as publicity and education about their spirit deeds. Martyrs are not only remembered for their sacrifices made during the liberation of the Chinese people in the last century, they continue to be remembered today for their sacrifices made when on duty. China has listed at least 20 million people who have sacrificed their lives for the nation's independence and the development of the country in modern times, or since the First Opium War in 1840. Some 25,000 memorials have been built nationwide to commemorate them in times of peace. People who sacrificed their lives due to public service will also be honored as heroes. Li Xiangqun, a 20-year-old soldier, died in a flooding rescue operation in 1998. Reporter Shao Yunhuan, Xu Xinghu and Zhu Ying were killed by a NATO missile attack on the Chinese embassy in former Yugoslavia in 1999. 13 Chinese soldiers have been killed in UN peacekeeping missions. Their names will be remembered by future generations. Our reporters went out onto the streets of Beijing to see how Chinese people regard the significance of the Martyrs Day and their understanding of the very word martyr.
We shouldn't let martyrs sacrifice themselves in vain. We should keep their spiritual legacy in mind forever. In the past, we referred to those who sacrifice themselves as a martyr. Nowadays, it has a different definition. It's just a spiritual existence. In everyday life, those who contribute their lives to their work can also be regarded as martyrs.
On one hand, Martyrs Day may help us remember history. On the other hand, it will draw today's impulsive society back to its roots. It gives us an opportunity to remember those that dedicated their lives for the development of our country. In my opinion, in this peaceful age, people who safeguard social justice and orders should also be treated as martyrs or heroes. For example, like those who save lives or people who dedicate themselves to building up the state.
I think this represents national faith and belief. We set up this day, the Martyrs Day, to let younger generations know how our country developed. This will arouse a national pride in them. We need to take this occasion to consolidate national cohesion, to learn about our history and march towards a better future. We have many martyrs in our country. For instance, those who are courageous and sacrifice themselves bravely and who die for the people's interests.
Mr. Xu, now let's talk about this legislation. The Heroes and Martyrs Protection Law. It's now in effect. How important is this legislation?
Well, let me talk about its necessity. The Martyrs Day was created in 2014. Actually, the efforts to create such a day had been going on before that for about 10 years, more or less 10 years, I would say. People, they saw the need to remember, to mark the sacrifices and those who gave their life to the country. Because over the past 40 years, since the reform and opening up in 1978, basically, in the previous, I would say, 35 years, people, the key words for this nation is development, economic development. So nothing will be tolerated to stand in the way of development. And basically, all the focus has been on the development, and then somehow you're ignoring even your heroes, your martyrs, their contributions. Put aside, it's not properly, I would say, worshipped and respected. And then in 2014, you have the Martyrs Day, that's very good. But still, you do have the instance after instance. You have the individuals, you have companies who profit or who even make fun of the name, the reputation, the deeds of those martyrs. This is I would say intolerable. I would say any nation, this won't be tolerated. If you look at it in the United States, I mean, not to mention about the defamation of the martyrs, or the name, the reputation, the image, the deeds, or twist the deeds, distort the deeds. Even you speak publicly, anything ill about the military, anything ill about the soldier, that's political incorrectness. For a politician, that's the end of your career. But in our country, somehow, I think there's we call it a political nihilism. People, either they have this short memory, either they don't know much about history,
or they take the good lives nowadays for granted.
And somehow we forget history. Remember, if you forget history, history could repeat itself.
That's exactly why Chinese President Xi Jinping said a nation forgets about its past will have no future, right?
Exactly. That's why we have introduced this law to protect the martyrs, their reputation, to protect the heroes of this nation, because these are treasures of this nation in terms of spiritual. This should be carried on for generations after generations.
And this law took effect on May the 1st this year. And after that, a major case was handed in northwest China's Xi'an city, and a company made fun of poetry written by a martyr and turned it into a vulgar online satire. Do you think the punishment is tough enough to set an example?
No, actually, that's the general Ye Ting in the civil war, basically between the communists and the nationalists, or KMT. Ye Ting was imprisoned by the KMT, and he wrote a very famous poem you mentioned there. There's a holy word, freedom. And the Xi'an company, they make fun of this word, replacing it with something like a painless abortion. This is
absolutely intolerable.
Absolutely taboo, and they should be punished much severe. I would say we should not even talk about this. This is something everybody will act voluntarily to show our respect, to remember the heroic deeds and the sacrifices of those martyrs and heroes, not to mention to make fun of them. And even the company, when they are offering the apology, they're still making fun of another hero. So this is not, I would say, what's the purpose of law? For one thing is punishment. The second meaning is really deterrence. If the punishment is not enough, and then there is no effects of deterrence.
And this kind of political correctness should be a common sense for each and every nation, right?
Exactly, it should be the common sense. That's why we should probably never talk about this profanity of the fame, of the reputation of the heroes again in the future. I just hope we don't talk about it again, because this is something everybody obeys, everybody acts naturally, because we do have respect. We do need to remember the contribution. If you read better history and you understand today better, you know who you are, your identity, and where you want to go, and ultimate goal of your nation.
And now we're watching live footage from Tiananmen Square in central Beijing. The monument to the people's heroes is standing right in the middle of Tiananmen Square. So earlier we were talking about those heroes sacrificed their lives in the revolutionary times. It's almost a century-long struggle. Earlier you mentioned there's a belief to propel them to devote their lives to this cause. How would you describe that belief?
I think that belief is, I would say, worldwide. I would say there is a common value basically shared by every nation. For every nation, they have their own heroes, right? And we should never forget our heroes, because the heroes, we call them heroes because they have done something which is much larger than themselves. They pursued something which is beyond their personal gains, beyond their personal life. It's about the nation, it's about their people. That's something charitable, that's something valuable, that's something rare. That's why we should cherish the spirit and the deeds of those martyrs.
And we must also remember that in peacetime, in time of peace, there are also heroes who sacrifice their lives on duty, still to this great cause ongoing, right?
Absolutely. We mentioned in our earlier reports, for example, if there's a rescue operation, you do need only those who are heroic enough that will basically take the risk, put their lives on risk to save.
Chinese President Xi Jinping, who's also the General Secretary of the CPC Central Committee, and other senior officials of the country are entering Tiananmen Square to commemorate the Martyrs Day. You're watching live footage from Tiananmen Square. That's the Chinese national flag. And representatives from all walks of life are also gathered there, waiting in line to pay tribute to men and women who lost their lives fighting for freedom and the country's sovereignty, as well as the nation's liberation and independence. And Martyrs Day on September the 30th in China is meant to commemorate those brave heroes, so future generations will remember their sacrifices. These are war veterans and families of the heroes and martyrs, as well as people from all walks of life. You can see from the government sector, the military, students, and workers, official workers are all gathered at Tiananmen Square right now. A solemn ceremony to mark the Martyrs Day is about to start. Chinese President Xi Jinping, also the General Secretary of the CPC Central Committee, is leading senior officials to observe this solemn occasion. To present flowers to the monument to the people's heroes. And these are the young pioneers. We are watching live footage from Tiananmen Square in central Beijing. A commemorative ceremony for China's Martyrs Day is about to start. Right in the middle of the Tiananmen Square is the monument to the people's heroes. Chinese President Xi Jinping honor guards are about to enter the venue. You're watching live footage from Tiananmen Square in central Beijing. Chinese President Xi Jinping is leading senior officials of the country to attend a commemoration marking China's Martyrs Day. And this is China's 5th annual Martyrs Day, a time for the whole nation to honor its fallen heroes, both in revolutionary times, war times, and peacetime. China has a long tradition of commemorating and honoring those who lost their lives serving their country. The Martyrs' Day came into being in the year 2014. Also, Chinese law that protects the reputation and honor of those who sacrificed for the nation is now in effect. That's the Heroes and Martyrs Protection Law of China. It was adopted earlier this year and officially came into effect on May the 1st. You're watching live footage from Tiananmen Square in central Beijing. Go!
今天是国家设立的烈士纪念日。
Today marks China's Martyrs Day.
我们在这里隆重举行向人民英雄敬献花篮仪式。
To present flowers to the monument to the people's heroes.
仪式开始。
Now the ceremony officially starts.
唱。 中华人民共和国
The national anthem of the People's Republic of China.
向为中国人民解放事业和共和国建设事业英勇献身的烈士默哀。
Now, observance of silence.
默哀毕。少年儿童献唱。
Now a choir of young pioneers are singing the song "We're the Heirs of Communism."
向人民英雄敬献花篮。
Now present floral tributes to the monument to the people's heroes. You're watching live footage from Tian'anmen Square in central Beijing. A ceremony commemorating China's Martyrs Day is underway. Representatives from all walks of life are gathered there to pay tribute to the men and women who lost their lives fighting for freedom and country's sovereignty, as well as the nation's liberation and independence. Chinese President Xi Jinping is leading senior officials to attend the ceremony. They're also expected to present floral wreaths to the monument. In the year 2014, the National People's Congress designated September the 30th as China's Martyrs Day to commemorate those who lost their lives fighting for the nation's independence and prosperity. And today's event is the 5th Martyrs Day in China. It's centered around the monument to the people's heroes, which has stood at Tiananmen Square in central Beijing for more than half a century. It was established to honor those heroes who paid the ultimate price for national independence and prosperity, as well as the freedom and well-being of the Chinese people. Earlier, we also heard young pioneers sang a song, "We're Heirs of Communism." And this popular children's song is usually sung by members of the Young Pioneers of China. It's a mass youth organization for children aged 6 to 14, and it's run by the Communist Youth League, a youth organization under the Chinese Communist Party. Now is the honor guards are presenting floral wreaths to the monument. Chinese President Xi Jinping, also the General Secretary of the CPC Central Committee, is leading senior officials to pay their respect to the people's heroes and martyrs. All the members of the Standing Committee, the Political Bureau of the CPC Central Committee are there. This ceremony shows the country's highest respect to the heroes. Also attending today's ceremony are representatives from all walks of life, as well as veterans and families of heroes and martyrs. It's believed that China has about 20 million martyrs in its modern struggling history. Many of them are unnamed. Only 2 million martyrs are listed in the government's directory. About 300 more people have been identified as martyrs in recent years. So the occasion is not only about remembering wartime heroes, but also those who devoted their lives to the cause of building a strong nation and prosperity for the people. China has a long tradition of commemorating and honoring martyrs and other heroes who contributed greatly to the nation's cause. It's not only the People's Monument, the monument to the People's Heroes in Beijing, and there are heroes and martyrs cemeteries all around the country, about 1,000 of them, and there are about 100 million people's visits to the martyrs' graves all around the country every year. Films, TV series and books about their achievements are also very popular in the country. Governments at all levels support families of martyrs. That's also stipulated by law. Central authorities have issued regulations to protect the commemorative facilities and increase the pensions for martyrs' families by around 23 times in the history of the Republic. About 200,000 of such families now benefit from government pensions and many other forms of support. Senior leaders are paying their respects to martyrs. Chinese President Xi Jinping is paying his respect. Chinese President Xi Jinping is leading senior officials to walk around the monument to the people's heroes to pay the highest respect to people's heroes. Those carvings you see are depictions of some important moments in Chinese people's struggle to gain liberation and independence since 1840. The start of the First Opium War, also a painful starting point for China's modern history. And it's believed that China has about 20 million martyrs in its modern history of struggling to gain independence. Senior Chinese officials are also paying their respects to the people's heroes and martyrs. Those carvings on the monument are depictions of some crucial moments in Chinese nations struggling to gain independence and liberation. It took the Chinese nation more than a century to gain independence. And since then, the whole nation is on course to build a strong socialist country with Chinese characteristics. So martyrs are not only remembered for their sacrifice in the revolutionary times, continue to be remembered today for standing in their duties in a time of peace. Now veterans are coming to pay their respects, as well as young pioneers. Young Pioneers of China is a mass youth organization for children aged 6 to 14. Also coming to Tiananmen Square today are families of heroes and martyrs. Now people from all walks of life coming to pay their respects. And the monument to the people's heroes, the center of the Tiananmen Square, is the centerpiece of China's honor and remembrance to people's heroes. And some 25,000 memorials have been built all around the country to commemorate heroes and martyrs. In time of peace, people sacrifice their lives due to public service will also be honored as heroes. There are soldiers, reporters, and many officials working in public service have sacrificed their lives. Also, 13 Chinese soldiers have been killed in UN peacekeeping missions all over the world, and their names are also remembered. Now people from all walks of life are paying their respect to the people's heroes. There are about 100 million people visit the martyrs' cemeteries all around the country every year. And government at all levels support the families of those who sacrifice their lives for the nation. Central authorities have issued regulations to protect commemorative facilities and increase the pensions for heroes' families by around 23 times. And about 200,000 of such families now benefit from government pensions. And each urban family receives over 13,000 yuan every year, and rural families some 8,000 yuan. They also enjoy preferential policies in education, employment, and many other fields which they deserve. You're watching live footage from Tiananmen Square. The ceremony marking China's Martyrs Day is underway. Chinese President Xi Jinping has led senior officials to pay their respect to the heroes and martyrs of the nation. people from all walks of life are now paying their respect as well. And the monument to the people's heroes is the center for the commemoration. You're watching live footage from Tiananmen Square in Beijing. The weather is beautiful today in the Chinese capital. That's a ceremony marking China's 5th Martyrs Day at Tiananmen Square. And for more insight, let's talk to Mr. Xu Qingduo here. So earlier we talked a lot about those heroes sacrificed their lives in revolutionary times, in the time of war. But what about those heroes in time of peace? They still devoted their life to the building of a prosperous nation and well-being of people's lives, right?
Absolutely. In the general sense, people tend to see heroes come only from battles, from the battlegrounds. They sacrifice, they give their life to the nation, so we remember them. But often people don't see properly. In the peacetime, there are also heroic acts. For example, in 2008, the earthquake in Sichuan province, in the rescue operation, some soldiers, some people, civilians also suffered to the extent of basically dying for the rescue of the other peoples over there. And also in other occasions, for example, rescue operation or even firefighters to save the people's lives but at the expense of their own. And I think those people, absolutely, in the peacetime, they are heroes.
And as a responsible player on the global stage, China is also taking global responsibilities. And there are 13 Chinese soldiers who have been killed in UN peacekeeping missions all around the world. What does that tell about China's efforts to be a responsible player?
Well, exactly. China is a very responsible, I would say, big power, a large country, a country with 1.4 billion people and second largest economy. China is contributing to peacekeeping mission of the UN, the second largest contributor, second only to the United States in terms of the fees of the operation. And in terms of the number of peacekeepers, China is actually providing the largest number among the 5 permanent members of the UN Security Council for peacekeeping missions. For example, in African countries, in some other countries, and even China is actually preparing more members to be ready to be sent to where it needs the peacekeeping mission over there. And that's a lot of sacrifice. That kind of sacrifice is beyond the sense of nation building, beyond the sense of absolutely the personal development on national building. It's about the larger sense of peace and stability and peace and security of the mankind, of this globe, of other nations actually. Yeah.
Right, and the Martyrs Day is on September 30th, but it's not only one day for Chinese nation to remember the heroes. For example, September 3rd is a day celebrating China's victory in the Second Sino-Japanese War, and in 2016 the Chinese government set December 13th as the day to remember the Nanjing massacre. Do you want to see more of such occasions being designated?
I think it absolutely necessary. We have set up these days to help people, to help the public remember history, to mark these important occasions. This is not just another day. It's a different day. It's a special day. It's something special happened. For example, the Victory Day against the invasion of the Japanese militaries over there. And this is the day we celebrate. This is the day of liberation of the Chinese people after decades of brutal invasion, brutal ruling by the Japanese militarism over there. So this is a special occasion. And for the Nanjing massacre, Even so, I would say if you look at the Second World War, I mean, the suffering of the Jewish people is quite well remembered, well told, I would say, in the form of documentary, in the form of publication, basically not only in Germany, in the Western world, but also around the world. But not so much so when it comes to the Nanjing massacre, unfortunately. This is why not only we need to set up a special day, we also do much more to publicize, to tell the story of the sufferings of the Chinese people. Remember, that's a slaughter ongoing for 6 weeks against the Chinese soldiers, unarmed soldiers, and also innocent civilians. This is against the international law, against the humanity. This is a crime of killing humanity. This is something I would say not only need to be remembered by the Chinese people, but also on the history of the world. I think there should be awareness of what happened, many decades ago. We remember this to avoid repetition of anything like this in the future.
So you're saying that to cherish such important legacy, it should not only happen on one particular day or some particular days. It should be a common work for the whole nation, right?
Well, exactly. I think this is, of course, setting up a day. That's the first step. That's very key, important step. But that's not enough. We should tell the young generations, our young people, in a way that they feel related, in a way that they feel something happened decades ago is somehow related to today's peace, security, and prosperity, and where we are from, where our forefathers have done for today's peaceful environment to develop ourselves, to develop the nation, and where our nation is moving toward. That's very important to understand who we are and where we are going.
Thank you very much, Mr. Xu Qingduo from the Pangold Institution. And that's it for this special coverage on China's Martyrs Day on CGTN. I'm Pan Zheng in Beijing. Bye-bye.